I know Jim Irsay says a lot of things, and I know we're still 70-something days away from the draft, but do you think in any way he was tipping his hand there for what his preference would be come April?
I mean, if that's his preference right now, it might not be his preference when it actually matters. So I wouldn't go too crazy in Chicago about that quote. I know it's going to get aggregated everywhere and played everywhere. What Jim Irsay says about liking one specific quarterback on February 14th might not carry a lot of weight on March 14th or April 14th. It may change who he likes, who Chris Ballard likes, who Shane Steichen likes. I mean, the Colts haven't even discussed any of these guys with Shane Steichen in depth. The combine hasn't even, happened or 2 weeks from that. So, funny little quip in there from Jim Irsay, but I wouldn't read any more into it than that right now.
Look, there's a lot of factors in there. So Shane Steichen, what indication did you get on what kind of quarterback he wants? Does he want a Jalen Hurts who can run? Does he want somebody like Will Levis who's got, a bit more size, obviously a lot more size than Bryce Young? Which one might they fall in love with, JJ?
So Shane Steichen today said, the three traits he values in a quarterback are accuracy, decision-making, and the ability to create. And, hearing those, it's like, okay, that's a good roadmap. I think most quarterbacks you're looking at nowadays, especially the last, you're not going to find a lot of true pocket passers, but Shane Steichen has experience, obviously, coaching Jalen Hurts, and he did a fantastic job with him. But year before that, he went in and he did a great job with Justin Herbert. So, seeing the work that he did in 2020 with Herbert, who is a quarterback who can be mobile, he can create, but is mostly going to be I'm just going to let things rip type of guy with my arm strength. And then before that, he's coaching a 35-year-old Phillip Rivers. So, I think his experience coaching those different kinds of quarterbacks lends itself to there not being one archetype of quarterback that he may want to bring in the NFL draft.
So is it going to be on the table that Chris Ballard and the Colts will just sit there at 4 and accept whatever quarterback comes to them at 4? Because that's our fear. We need panic.
Yes, that is a possibility, because something that Chris Ballard is so good at is knowing when to be aggressive, when to stand pat, and when he can trade back and still get his guy. We've seen that play out in the 2020 draft when he went up a couple of spots to go get Jonathan Taylor. We saw it play out in 2022 when we had Alec Pierce graded really high on our wide receiver board, but knew he could still be available if we traded back 10 picks with the Minnesota Vikings and went ahead and did that. Now, the stakes are obviously higher here, but even in 2018, we don't need a quarterback, but we really like Quentin Nelson. We can still get him if we move back from 3 to 6. So that's an ability that Chris Ballard has to know where guys are going to go. And if Chris Ballard settles on a guy and Shane Steichen and Jim Irsay are in agreement that, all right, this is our guy, and you know what? Houston at number 2, they're going to go get him. That's when I think you would see the Colts get aggressive and go up to trade for number 1 with the Bears. But we are a ways away from that being a circumstance the Colts go out and pursue. I think we got to get through the combine first. Usually when those trades are made, it's right around the end of the combine, if not a week after. So when you get into mid-March, when you've seen traditionally teams make a move up to number 1. But that possibility that the Colts say, all right, we like this guy. We know Houston doesn't like this guy. And we know that, all right, this team just, maybe they're sniffing around the Bears' number 1 pick. We know they don't like him. Hey, we can sit there at 3. He's our top quarterback on our board. Or we can sit there at 4, he's our top quarterback on the board. And maybe all we have to do is trade up to 3 with Arizona to ensure we get him. We don't have to go all the way up to number 1.
Because Chris Ballard said he would do whatever it takes to get his number 1 quarterback. He said that in the season-ending press conference.
Yeah, Danny. But the thing that I think got sort of lost in the, taking that quote was that it was only if it was the clear-cut number 1 quarterback. And that doesn't mean that, all right, well, this guy's number one on our board, we got to go get him. We could have a 1A, 1B type situation where the cost of trading up from number one, whether it's sacrificing the 35th overall pick, next year's first vote, whatever it may be, outweighs the benefit of just, hey, going and getting the B guy, 1B, and using those picks to accentuate your roster.
JJ Stankevitz covers the Colts, Colts.com, used to cover the Bears. Perfect guest to kick this off because, JJ, the Bears think they have their quarterback, so Bears fans are doing all of the hypothetical trades and the mocks and all of that, and the Colts make the most sense as a trade-down partner because they need a quarterback, because they've failed with veteran quarterbacks recently, and because, in theory, they'd want to jump in front of Houston, so Houston wouldn't take the quarterback that they like, and then they also don't miss out on the guy, but also have to face him twice a year. So there's a million mocks of the Bears trading down from 1 to 4, and everybody mocks it with the trade value chart, the 35th pick in the draft, the second rounder, and next year's first. Do you think that is draft capital that Ballard would be comfortable giving up if he went out to get his clear-cut number one guy?
Yeah, I mean, that's, that goes back to what we were just talking about, that, he was asked, would you move heaven and earth to go get that guy who you think is the guy in this draft? And he said, yeah, I would. I think at that point, if you're going to get a guy you're convinced is going to be an all-pro level star quarterback in this league, the number one overall, your first rounder next year in the 35th overall pick to swap from 4 to 1 is definitely a fair price. I mean, if you're looking at just the value of that, if you're the Colts, it would be that. But again, the Colts have to determine if they have that guy. And I see a lot of these mocks right now, which are, you're doing, some of the folks who do it, like Dane Brugler, Lance Zierlein, they're incredibly well informed in this process. But the Colts the Colts just hired a head coach today. Like we're not making, all right, well, just because we hired Shane Steichen means we're trading up to number one. Like that's not
of course
thing here. Right. I know no one wants to be patient at this time of year. You just want to figure out what's going to happen. But, hey, we got 2.5 months until the draft, and, it's still 2 weeks until you can even sit down with these guys at the combine. So a lot still to be decided in terms of how the Colts filled out their draft board.
Hey, JJ, we used to have a show called the Spiegel and Parkins Show. It was very different, and we did a segment called Let It Play Out.
And we're patient guys.
But it was very unpopular. That's segment.
True. I hated it.
Right, you hated that segment. Because you're just trying to sit around, let stuff play out. Nobody wants to do that. So, we got more to go. Could the likes of Michael Pittman or DeForest Buckner or a Bears fan dreams of Quentin Nelson even be available in a deal as opposed to or in addition to some draft capital?
I mean, look, never say never, but the thought of the Colts trading up for the number one overall pick, but then trading their number one wide receiver in that deal doesn't make a lot of sense. When Michael Pittman had 99 catches this year, and is now coming into a situation with Shane Steichen, a guy who, by the way, he has a lot of experience with quarterbacks. He has experience working with Keenan Allen, which I think is a really good comp for Michael Pittman, a guy I talked with one of our cornerbacks about last year, just how kind of similar players they can be. So I don't think trading Pitt is very realistic in a trade up for number one. DeForest Buckner, it's an interesting one, but he's such a leader in that locker room. The Colts value him and Grover Stewart so highly in terms of what they're able to do in the interior of that D-line. Buck was one of the guys who came out of this season without any blemishes to him. In a 4-12-1 season, there was no nits to pick with DeForest Buckner's game. I think, he's a guy who you envision him staying and being a captain and a leader in the interior of that defense going forward. And then Quentin Nelson, his contract just kicked in this year. So I don't foresee that being a thing. The Colts are going to bank on him improving in 2023. He said after the season, he knows exactly what he has to do this offseason to improve his play, and he's going to set out and work toward it.
By the way, that's Matt Eberflus's defense, of course, and some of his guys. Is the scheme going to stay the same, or might some of those guys not be as perfect a fit as they have been and maybe come here and play for Matt?
Yeah, I mean, if Gus Bradley stays on as defensive coordinator, Gus and Shane Steichen were together with the Chargers for 4 years. I don't think you'll see a change in terms of the top personnel on that side of the ball again if Gus winds up staying. That's something that Shane Steichen is working through right now in terms of, okay, am I going to keep Gus in that defensive staff, keep Bubba Ventura on our special teams coordinator, or make any changes there while also then building out his offensive staff?
Just two more things, at least, that I had, JJ. Do you believe conventional wisdom that, they tried it with Phillip Rivers, they tried it with Jacoby Brissett, they've tried it with veteran quarterbacks a couple of years in a row here, like whether they stay at 4, they trade up to 1, they trade down, whatever. Like, do you believe that this is the year that the Colts go the young quarterback route?
I mean, it's more likely than not by probably a pretty significant factor that that's the direction this team goes. Having the 4th overall pick, Chris Ballard said after the season, like, we know where we're drafting, and then he said, well, we earned it too, by going 4-12-1. The opportunity to go get that young quarterback to, kind of reset your franchise building clock almost with the young quarterback. Again, I'm not going to say it's 100% because that would be foolish to say right now, even if, let's wait and see show got canceled. But I think it's probably more likely than not that that's the direction things go.
Is it in play that Jim Irsay overrules Chris Ballard and pushes him with his hunger? We dream of the chaotic owner. Or was his move Jeff Saturday last year? He got that for 8 games, and now he's letting Chris Ballard do things again.
No, I think he lets Chris Ballard and that scouting staff go to work. And, Jim Irsay is going to have counsel in this. Let's not forget Jim Irsay's been with the organization. His dad bought the team in, the 70s. He's been around football for a while. And the thing that always impresses me about him is he knows a lot. He knows more football than I think most owners in the NFL. Just because he's been in the GM chair before and he's been around it and he's always asking good questions and, providing feedback. I think he'll have input on it. I don't think he has the final decision on it. I think it's collaborative between Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen, and Jim Irsay because, look, if you have alignment between ownership, GM, and head coach on who the quarterback is going to be, you're probably set up for success as a franchise. So I think that's probably how you're going to see it play out.
Were you surprised Jeff Saturday didn't get the job?
No. Look, I think he came into a tough situation. It was never going to be easy. But ultimately, the Colts have never hired an interim. They've had a couple of interims, including my friend Rick Venturi down here. But none of them have been hired as full-time coaches. So I wasn't surprised just based off of that reasoning kind of as a starting point.